close your eyes for a second and picture the kitchen. Not a kitchen. The kitchen. The one where you sat at the table doing homework while your mother stood at the stove, and the overhead fluorescent light hummed at a frequency you could feel in your teeth if the house was quiet enough. The refrigerator was avocado green. The oven was harvest gold. The countertop had a pattern on it that was trying very hard to look like butcher block, and if you ran your fingernail across it, you could feel the slick, hard surface that was nothing like wood. The floor had a geometric pattern in brown and gold, and it gave slightly under your shoes in a way that actual stone never would. Everything in that kitchen was pretending to be something it was not. And here is the part nobody told you while you were sitting there with your math worksheet. Every single one of those choices, every color, every texture, every material, was there because of money. Not fashion, not taste, not some designer in New York deciding that avocado green was the color of the future. Money. The entire visual world you grew up in, the one that looked so specific and so deliberate and so confidently itself, was an accident of economics. And once you understand that, you will never look at a photograph of a 1972 kitchen the same way again. Start with the green. General Electric, Frigidaire, Whirlpool, and the other major appliance manufacturers introduced colored porcelain enamel finishes for kitchen appliances in the early 1960s. Before that, your refrigerator was white. Your stove was white. Your dishwasher, if you had one, was white. And white showed everything. Every grease splatter from the skillet. Every water spot from the steam. Every fingerprint from every child who opened that refrigerator 14 times between 3:30 and dinner. In a decade when kitchens were the operational center of family life, when almost every meal was cooked at home, when takeout meant a pizza, maybe once a month if you lived near a place that delivered, white appliances looked filthy by Wednesday. The manufacturers needed a color that would hide stains across the widest range of common kitchen contaminants. That is not a guess. Consumer research from the period, documented in trade publications like Appliance Manufacturer magazine between 1964 and 68, focused specifically on which colors concealed grease, mineral deposits, and food residue most effectively. Earth tones won. Avocado green, harvest gold, copper tone. These were not aesthetic revelations. They were engineering solutions to a cleaning problem, marketed as lifestyle upgrades. Avocado green peaked in consumer preference surveys around 1971 to 74. Harvest gold ran slightly later, roughly 73 to 77. Copper tone had a shorter window, maybe 67 to 75. And here is the detail that makes the economics inescapable. White never went away. White was always the budget option. The colored finishes carried a premium. You paid more for avocado green, and the reason you paid more was that the manufacturer could charge more for a finish that solved your visible dirt problem while selling you on the idea that you were making a style choice. Your mother's kitchen was not avocado green because she liked avocado green. It was avocado green because somebody at GE needed a color that would not show spaghetti sauce. The shift back to white, and eventually to stainless steel, was also economics. Stainless steel had been standard in commercial restaurant kitchens for decades, but was too expensive for residential appliances until manufacturing costs dropped in the 1990s. By roughly 2000, stainless outsold colored finishes in new appliance purchases. The stain problem got solved by a better material, and the avocado green went to the landfill. Both transitions, the arrival and the departure, were driven by the same force. Now look down, at the floor. If you grew up in a kitchen, built or remodeled between roughly 1960 and 1980, the floor under your feet was almost certainly vinyl. not linoleum, although everyone called it linoleum. True linoleum was a natural product, linseed oil and cork dust and wood flour pressed onto burlap, manufactured primarily by Armstrong Cork Company out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It was sturdy and honest, but polyvinyl chloride sheet flooring was cheaper, more waterproof, and could be printed with virtually any pattern using rotogravure printing technology. By the mid-60s, vinyl had replaced linoleum in most new construction, and the word linoleum had detached from its original meaning entirely. The patterns were wild: faux brick, faux stone, faux terrazzo, abstract geometrics in harvest gold and burnt orange. The variety was not a sign of creative ambition. It was a sign that the printing technology could produce any pattern at the same cost. So manufacturers offered everything and let the market sort it out. Your kitchen floor was a photograph, essentially. A picture of a material your family could not afford, printed on plastic sheeting made from petroleum, glued to plywood subflooring. It did the job. It wiped clean. It cost almost nothing. And if you remember the specific way that floor felt underfoot, the slight give, the warmth compared to actual stone, the way it built up wax along the baseboards that yellowed over the years, then you remember something that was never meant to be memorable. It was meant to be cheap. Walk out of the kitchen and down the hall to the basement. Open the door at the top of the stairs and feel the temperature drop. The smell hits you, slightly damp, slightly musty, and underneath that, the specific scent of adhesive and pressed wood product. You are looking at wood paneling, 4 by 8 sheets of it, running floor to ceiling, with vertical grooves at regular intervals, in a dark walnut tone that absorbed whatever light the 2 recessed ceiling fixtures were producing. Here is the secret every wood-paneled basement in America was keeping. The wall behind it was a mess. Mass suburban construction in the post-war years prioritized speed above everything. Drywall replaced plaster because it was faster to install, but finishing drywall to a smooth, paintable surface required skilled labor and multiple passes of taping, mudding, and sanding. In basements and secondary rooms, builders frequently left the drywall rough or barely finished. The homeowner had 2 options: hire someone to finish the walls properly, or cover them up. Georgia Pacific, Masonite, Weyerhaeuser, and other manufacturers provided the cover. A sheet of printed hardboard or thin Lowen plywood with a photographically reproduced wood grain surface, retailing in the early 1970s for approximately $3 to $8 per sheet. Adjust for inflation, and that is maybe $20 to $55. An entire basement room could be paneled for under $100 in 72 money. A homeowner with a hammer, a level, and a Saturday afternoon could do it alone. Most of that paneling was not wood, not in any meaningful sense. It was paper printed to look like wood, laminated onto compressed fiber or the thinnest plywood available. If you knocked on it, it sounded hollow. If you leaned against it hard, it bowed. But it covered the wall. It hid the imperfect drywall, the exposed seams, the crooked corners of a house built fast and sold faster. The warm, cave-like American den of the 1970s, the room where the family watched television and the teenagers played records, was an affordable solution to a construction shortcut. The aesthetic was an after effect. Now sit down on that basement floor, or rather, sink into it. Shag carpet, pile height exceeding an inch, often 1.5 inches to 3 inches, in colors that range from deep olive to burnt orange to a cream that never stayed cream for long. It entered the American market in the early 60s and peaked somewhere around 1971 to 76. The common assumption is that shag was a luxury product that became mainstream. The reality is the opposite. Long pile carpet uses fewer tufts per square inch than dense, low-pile carpet. A shag carpet at 5 tufts per square inch used substantially less yarn per square foot than a tight commercial carpet at 40 or more tufts per square inch, despite looking richer and deeper. The visual impression of luxury was an optical effect produced by manufacturing economy. The long fibers created the appearance of depth and richness, while requiring less raw material than the alternative. Meanwhile, synthetic fibers, nylon and polyester primarily, were dropping in cost as petrochemical manufacturing scaled through the 60s. And the tufting machines in Dalton, Georgia, the carpet capital of the world, could produce shag faster than dense low-pile because there were fewer tufts to set per pass, reducing production costs by enormous margins compared to traditional woven carpet. Shag carpet did not look expensive because it was expensive. It looked expensive because it was cheap to make, and nobody could tell the difference. What everybody could tell was that it swallowed things: coins, Lego bricks, popcorn, pen caps, earring backs. Once something fell below the pile line, it was gone until someone dragged out the vacuum, and even then, the vacuum had to fight for it. That was the trade-off you lived inside without knowing the economics behind it. Come back upstairs. Run your hand along the kitchen counter. For 30 years, America's middle class ate dinner on a photograph of marble glued to compressed paper. That is what Formica was. High-pressure laminate, melamine resin bonded to craft paper under heat and pressure, printed with a pattern that imitated whatever natural material the homeowner could not afford. Marble veining, granite speckle, slate texture, butcher block wood grain. The Formica Corporation, founded in Cincinnati in 1913, originally made laminated electrical insulation. Their pivot to decorative countertops in the post-war era was one of the most successful material substitutions in American consumer history. The numbers explain why. Granite countertops in the 1960s and 70s required quarrying heavy stone, shipping it across the country, and hiring skilled fabricators to cut and install it. The cost was prohibitive for middle-class kitchens. Formica laminate cost roughly 1/10 the price. 1/10. You could surface an entire kitchen for what one section of granite countertop would run you. The brand became so dominant that the word Formica became generic, the same way people said Kleenex for tissue or Xerox for photocopy. Here is the reversal that nobody in 1972 saw coming. Granite countertops, the unobtainable luxury of the era, are now standard in new American home construction. Chinese and Brazilian quarrying operations and global shipping drove the cost down so dramatically through the 90s and 2000s that granite went from rarer in homes than swimming pools to default builder grade. The Formica countertop your mother wiped down every evening was not a failure of taste. It was the best available answer to a price problem that took 30 years to solve by other means. Now step outside, walk to the driveway, look at the car. If it was built between roughly 1955 and 1965, it was wearing more chrome than some jewelry stores stocked in silver. Bumpers, grills, side moldings, door handles, mirror housings, rocker panels, and purely decorative spears and fins, all chrome-plated. The 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, the 1959 Cadillac Eldorado. These are the icons. And the chrome on them was not what it appeared to be. Chrome plating is a thin layer of chromium electroplated over nickel, over copper, over a base metal, usually stamped steel or die-cast zinc. Stamped steel was the cheapest way to form complex shapes. It was also ugly and corroded easily. Chrome electroplating, by the 1950s, an industrially mature and low-cost per unit process, made stamped steel look like polished silver. The entire chrome era in American automotive design driven on the styling side by General Motors design chief Harley Earl and his successor Bill Mitchell, was underwritten by this economic fact. Chrome was not luxury. Chrome was the cheapest way to make stamped steel look like it cost a fortune. Harley Earl understood this intuitively. His philosophy, widely documented by design historian Stephen Bailey, was that chrome made a Chevrolet owner feel they were driving something approaching a Cadillac. The Class Bridge was built from electrochemistry. Chrome's decline was also economic. The 1973 oil crisis pushed automakers toward weight reduction for fuel economy. Federal bumper standards required heavier, more impact-absorbent designs that were expensive to chrome plate. Environmental regulation of hexavalent chromium, a carcinogen and serious water pollutant generated by the plating process, raised costs further. Plastic bumper covers, painted body color, weighed less and cost less. By 1980, most American cars had dramatically less chrome than their 65 predecessors. The material did not fall out of fashion. It got priced out by regulation and competition from cheaper alternatives. Same story as the kitchen. Same story as the floor. Now look up, past the car, past the driveway, down the street. It is dusk, and the signs are coming on. Neon. Real neon. Neon gas in a hand-bent glass tube, electrified, producing that specific orange-red glow that no other light source in history has quite matched. Argon and mercury for blue. Phosphor coatings for green, white, pink. Every motel, every diner, every car dealership, every bowling alley, every bar on every commercial strip in America had neon in the window or on the roof or standing on a pole by the road. Peak installation density ran through the 50s and 60s. The economics were rational. A neon sign produced far more visible light per watt than an equivalent incandescent bulb sign. The tubes lasted 8 to 15 years before needing recharging. The visual impact per dollar of operating cost was unmatched in the era. Neon was not decorative excess. It was the most cost-effective way to make your business visible after dark. But every neon sign was made by hand. A craftsman heating glass, tubing over an open flame, bending it to shape letter by letter, curve by curve, filling each section with gas, sealing the electrodes. By the 50s, the United States had thousands of neon shops staffed by artisan tube benders. It was skilled work. You could not automate it. That was also its vulnerability. When plastic-faced, fluorescent backlit signs arrived, offering lower manufacturing costs and the corporate uniformity that franchise chains like McDonald's and Holiday Inn demanded, neon could not compete on price or standardization. When LED channel letters arrived in the 90s, the efficiency advantage neon had held over incandescent bulbs evaporated against an even newer technology. When municipalities began passing sign ordinances targeting visual clutter, neon's elaborate shapes and bright colors were exactly what the regulations aimed to reduce. And when the tube benders retired, there were not enough apprentices to replace them. The craft shrank. The lights went out. Literally. Every neon sign you remember from your hometown was hand-bent by someone whose skill had no mass-manufactured substitute. When those hands stopped working, that light went away in a way that fluorescent plastic and LED strips have never and will never replicate. There is one more material that deserves its own moment because it connected everything. Vinyl. Polyvinyl chloride. PVC. It was your car seat in summer, the one that stuck to the backs of your bare legs and smelled like hot plastic when the car had been parked in the sun with the windows up. It was the record album you slid out of its sleeve and set on the turntable. It was the floor under your feet, the siding on the house, the garden hose coiled by the spigot, the shower curtain, the raincoat. One material, derived from petroleum, moldable and printable and colorable and waterproof, replaced leather and rubber and wood and glass across dozens of applications simultaneously. PVC production scaled through the 50s and 60s as petrochemical feedstock was cheap and abundant. The material's versatility made it the default answer to almost any manufacturing question that started with, how do we make this for less? The tactile experience of vinyl, that specific slight stickiness in heat, that particular gloss, that way it held warmth and crackled slightly when it aged, was the background texture of domestic American life for an entire generation. You lived inside it without ever thinking about what it was or why it was there. It was there because oil was cheap. That is the whole answer. If you step back far enough, the pattern becomes unmistakable. Avocado green hid stains. Wood paneling hid bad drywall. Shag carpet produced the illusion of luxury at economy cost. Formica imitated stone for a tenth of the price. Chrome made stamped steel look like silver. Neon delivered maximum visibility per watt. Vinyl replaced everything that cost more than vinyl. The entire aesthetic of mid-century America was pragmatism dressed up as style. And the remarkable thing, the thing that deserves more respect than it usually gets, is that it worked. Not as design, exactly. Not the way the Eames chairs and Saarinen tables worked, the high-end pieces that museum curators would later celebrate. Charles Eames once said the details are not the details. They make the design. He was talking about deliberate, considered craft. But the same principle applied in reverse across millions of ordinary homes. The details, the specific green, the specific grain pattern on the paneling, the specific depth of the carpet pile, were determined by cost constraints, and they accidentally became the design. They became what an era looked like. There is a temptation to romanticize all of this, and another temptation to mock it. The 1990s and 2000s were not kind to the mid-century palate. Avocado green became a punchline. Wood paneling became shorthand for taste failure. Shag carpet was something you ripped out and photographed for a renovation blog. But calling it tacky misses the point as badly as calling it golden age perfection would. These were resourceful solutions to real problems, produced by an industrial economy operating at the intersection of mass construction, affordable petrochemistry, and a middle class that wanted its homes to look good on a budget that did not include marble or hardwood or hand-blown glass. The world you grew up in was not designed by visionaries. It was engineered by product managers at Georgia Pacific and GE and DuPont and Armstrong, people whose names never appeared in design magazines, solving problems with the cheapest materials available. And it accidentally became the most visually distinctive domestic era in American history. No era before or since has a kitchen you can identify from a single color swatch. What is worth sitting with, quietly, is that almost all of it is gone now. Not because it failed, because something cheaper or more efficient came along. The same economic logic that created the avocado refrigerator eventually replaced it. The stainless steel kitchen, the gray-toned vinyl plank floor, the quartz countertop, the LED sign, these are the new pragmatic solutions. In 40 years, someone will explain why every kitchen in 2024 looked the same shade of grayish, and the answer will be the same: money, manufacturing, materials, science, not fashion. If you remember the specific weight of a chrome door handle on a 1963 Chevrolet, or the way shag carpet felt between your toes on a Saturday morning, or the hum and flicker of a neon open sign in a diner window at dusk, you are remembering something that was never meant to be beautiful. It was meant to be affordable. That it became beautiful anyway, that it became the color and texture of an entire generation's memory, is the part no engineer planned for. Tell me in the comments what material from that era you remember most. Not the color, not the name, but the way it felt. The texture under your hand, the temperature of it, the specific sensory fact of it. That is the part the catalogs never printed and the trade magazines never measured. And it is the only part that is yours. Subscribe if you want these memories handled with the specificity they earn, not smoothed into greeting cards or dismissed as bad taste, but told straight, the way the record actually reads.